the fantasy world of Fabulosa, wizards assemble teams of the greatest champions from across space and time to do battle in the arena, each with a unique set of abilities and specializations. For in Fabulosa, all want and need has been extinguished, leaving behind only one plague to torment the masses: boredom. Welcome to Super Fantasy Brawl, the self-proclaimed cure to boredom from Mythic Games. Is it a super fantastic miniature board game? Short answer, yes. Long answer, see what you think by the end of this review. When Super Fantasy Brawl was first announced, I wasn't completely convinced it would be a game I would enjoy. The punchy, cartoonish art aesthetic wasn't pulling me in, and I normally favour games with a higher character count than this 3-a-side arena game. I remember backing it largely because the game was being published by Mythic Games, a company that, besides having heavy involvement in the first Kickstarter for Mythic Battles Pantheon, had subsequently produced such games as Solomon Kane and Reichbusters that sat more squarely in my interests at the time. It was only after seeing the game being played and starting to become more intimately familiar with the champions that Super Fantasy Brawl took its place as the quick, exciting two-player bruiser of a game that I didn't even realise I needed in my collection. Super Fantasy Brawl plays out on a standardised hex board featuring the player's deployment zones, 3 generally impassable statues, and 3 coloured zones around these statues. Additionally, the players will take turns to place traps on 4 tiles with effects ranging from stunning champions to inflicting significant damage. These will generally affect any model from either side that moves over and lands on them. In the standard 2-player game, players will select 3 champions using either casual or competitive draft rules and deploy them into the arena. Each of these 3 champions will contribute 6 action cards to form the player's unique 18-card deck, which will include attacks, reaction cards that could be played out of turn in response to an attack, and skills. During a standard turn, a player will take their hand of 5 cards and exhaust each of their coloured cores to play a card of corresponding colour, allowing their champion to move and take action on the board. Additionally, the players have access to 4 standard actions, which in exchange for cores may be played once each per turn. Once the player has exhausted all 3 cores, or wishes to take no further action, they discard the remainder of their hand, recharge their cores, and draw a new hand of 5 cards ready to play reactions in their opponent's turn or for use in their next turn, and play then passes to their opponent. The game is a race to accumulate 5 trophies by being the only player on the board at the start of your own turn to have completed an evolving set of challenges during the game. For example, if at the start of your turn the domination challenge is in play and you are the only player that meets the requirement to have a champion adjacent to each statue, then you will gain a number of trophies equal to this challenge card's place on the challenge track. Each time a full round of turns is completed, the trophies will move along the track, potentially changing their worth, and a new challenge will be revealed. Additionally, as you'd expect from the name, players gain a trophy each time one of their opponent's models is taken out of action by inflicting its maximum number of wounds shown on their champion card. This card also shows any armour the champion may have, reducing the damage taken from attacks, and each time the champion deals the final wound to an enemy champion, you may flip the card to level up the champion, unlocking a unique ability and/or improving their health and/or armour statistic. Their opponent's champion, on the other hand, is not removed from the game permanently, but rather restored, as if by magic, before deploying back into the arena, ensuring plenty of back and forth as advantage is gained and then lost as the brawl progresses. One of the things that immediately struck me about the game is how sleek the core game mechanics have been made. The use of primary colours and clear zone-based objectives makes it immediately accessible and easy to understand. Initially it felt like the sequence of attacks and skills would take time to remember, but in practice these arrive so often in gameplay that most players for whom I have demonstrated the game appear to pick this up within their first playthrough. This accessibility is one of the game's greatest strengths. I've played the game with less experienced gamers, with my teenage children, and in all cases the basics of the game have been picked up in minutes. The race to 5 trophies is a sprint rather than a marathon, and most games I have played frantically conclude in under an hour, often close into 30 minutes. This makes multiple games in a session not only possible, but desirable, and creates opportunity for players to complete games with different champions very quickly, thereby determining which brawlers will suit their personal style at a speed simply impossible for many miniature board games. As a channel that loves the narrative element of games, it is not without certain regrets that we note how little information we are given about the world of Fabulosa. The origins of the characters and the fluff of the game is restricted to the briefest introduction and the odd quotation on gameplay cards, even these having been added in the most unobtrusive way possible. It's as if every non-essential element has been stripped back to create the purest gameplay experience possible. However, this is not to suggest that the game is chess-like or without flavour. The game instead achieves this by applying unique brawlers into this standardised rule set. Each champion possesses a different configuration of abilities that allow the player to select a trio that fits their style. Variations in defensive capability, movement, damage output, the ability to manipulate their opponent, and variations in the range of abilities all combine to ensure that of all the 24 champions that have been released so far, no two feel alike. All of the specialised information that creates this flavour is contained within the cards or a condensed list of shared terms that fit onto a couple of pages at the back of the rulebook, which prevents the core rule set from being convoluted with a lot of additional rules. This also reduces the learning required for new players, who can initially focus on a streamlined core rule set and the rules specifically applicable to their own 3 champions, rather than worrying excessively about every possible move of every champion in the game. If we take a brief look at one of the attack cards, we can demonstrate this further. Many cards will have a movement value, allowing them to walk the applicable champion even if they do not intend to use the attack. A variety of symbols will indicate whether the champion needs to be adjacent to the target, and if not, whether the line to their target needs to be direct or can be indirect. In this particular case, the attack must be on a target that is between 2 and 3 hexes in a direct line away from the champion using the card after the movement value has been used or ignored. Most attacks will deal some amount of raw damage that may be reduced by the target's armor, but many cards will also have pre-attack or post-attack benefits, many of which are more advantageous than the damage output. For example, this card will push the target champion away after the attack is completed, potentially preventing the champion from fulfilling an objective. That I have yet to play a fraction of the games of Super Fantasy Brawl that I would like is evidence of the huge variety of champions, play styles, and tactical variation on offer despite the lean core rules. There is clearly much benefit for more competitive players to gain familiarity with the range of champions, building synergies and combos, as well as becoming better able to predict the moves of their opponents. However, the randomized objectives and the number of combinations of brawlers makes it feel like a game more about adaptation and tactical decision-making, rather than one where players will lock themselves into strategies they have determined prior to the start of the game. It is also important to emphasize that the lean rules are not indicative of a game that lacks complexity in the game state itself or the decisions available to players. To be effective at Super Fantasy Brawl, you must have awareness of the positioning of your champions relative to your opponent, make difficult decisions as to which attacks you react to, denying you that colour of core in the next turn, and which you take on the chin, and you'll need to constantly balance the risk of having your champions taken out against the evolving opportunity for your opponent to score at the start of their turn from the evolving challenge track. Games have been won or lost because the player failed to realise an objective that previously scored no trophies was about to become valuable, or vice versa. The rules may be simple, but there's a lot going on. Both players will need to keep their wits at every stage of the game, ensuring player engagement at all times. This is a game that is unashamedly built from the ground up with competitive play in mind. I personally would have liked to see a 3-player variant, as many of my games involve 2 players brawling and another looking on awaiting their turn, but this appears to have been resisted by Mythic Games specifically because of the asymmetry this would create in gameplay, though it should be noted a 4-player variant is included. To date, tournament play outside of a virtual setting has been curtailed by COVID, but this still appears to be on the cards, and we can only compliment small decisions by Mythic Games such as the availability of free online versions of the game and the inclusion of an extra challenge card set in the initial Kickstarter release to enable owners of the neoprene map board to undertake 2 games simultaneously, which make it easier for players to find opponents or to organise competitive events in the future. We always try to cite the negative aspects of any game we review, even when, as is the case here, we have a genuine love for the game in question. But honestly, it is very difficult to find true failures in this game that are not there simply by design. A retail release of the game would certainly increase its reach, but Mythic Games have repeatedly indicated that this should be expected in the future, with recent market conditions and COVID seemingly the only barrier. We have mentioned certain design features, such as the lack of a 3-player mode and the lack of narrative elements, but this feels like the designer's intent. I personally find the art style and the design of the miniatures themselves can be a little hit and miss, but that's just my personal preference, and no reflection of the love and quality that has been invested in these assets. Some players may agonise over which of their limited cores to play against a fairly wide range of possible actions, movements and targets, or to keep focused on the challenge track in the midst of combat, while others will revel in it. I think that says a lot about this game. Ultimately, whether you enjoy Super Fantasy Brawl is likely to depend simply on the type of game you'd prefer to play. If a sleek, tactical 2-player beat-em-up appeals to you, then this game provides much to admire, but that's not to say that it will be to every gamer's taste. For my part, it has rapidly become a firm favourite, with its easy setup, relatively quick play through time, and rules that are easy to explain to casual gamers, all cementing its place as one of my favourite games of this type. For that reason, we intend to make Super Fantasy Brawl the second game we feature regularly on Nameless Seraphim Gaming, with gameplay videos, painting tutorials and other content all in the works. So if Super Fantasy Brawl sounds like a game you'd enjoy, why not subscribe to the channel so that you can participate in our further exploration of this epic miniature board game. Until we meet again, work hard, play better, and take care out there.